Welcome back. In today's class, we will be learning about photosynthetic bacteria and its difference, that is between oxygenic and anoxygenic photosynthetic bacteria. Yes, just like plants, there are a few bacteria that is capable of synthesizing its own food. They are the photosynthetic bacteria. They have their own photosynthetic pigments, accessory pigments to synthesize their food. Under that classification, we're going to learn about oxygenic photosynthetic bacteria and anoxygenic photosynthetic bacteria. Let's see what are their differences, how they perform photosynthesis, what are the mechanisms involved, what are the requirements for the photosynthetic activity. Just like plants, as I mentioned, they have the potential to synthesize their own food under the influence of the photosynthetic pigment, that is bacteriochlorophyll. Accessory pigments like bacteriochlorophyll B, C, D, E, xanthophyll, carotenoids, and also physical parameters like carbon dioxide and sunlight. Photosynthetic bacteria are the ones which is capable of utilizing the water and carbon dioxide present in the atmosphere, utilizing the carbohydrates, proteins, fat material present, and convert them to generate ATP, which is the energy currency. The only difference between the oxygenic and anoxygenic photosynthetic bacteria are an oxygenic photosynthetic bacteria liberate oxygen as a byproduct of its photosynthetic activity, whereas an anoxygenic photosynthetic bacteria do not liberate oxygen. That is when this formula makes sense. In oxygenic bacteria, it will be water. H2O and carbon dioxide is converted into a product of food. But in case of anoxygenic photosynthetic bacteria, it can be just molecular hydrogen or it can be sulfur or any other organic compound. Thereby, there will be no production of oxygen. It will be production of sulfur. Here, the photosynthetic bacteria are generally classified into 35 groups, whereas group 10 among those 35 groups, group 10 involves anoxygenic photosynthetic bacteria and group 11 involves oxygenic photosynthetic bacteria. The best example for anoxygenic photosynthetic bacteria would be green bacteria, purple bacteria and helicobacteria. Under green bacteria, we have green sulfur bacteria, green non-sulfur bacteria. Under purple bacteria, we have purple non-sulfur bacteria and purple sulfur bacteria and helicobacteria also. These are the three important examples of anoxygenic photosynthetic bacteria. That is green bacteria, purple bacteria and helicobacteria. In case of oxygenic bacteria, as we all know, it would be cyanobacteria. Cyanobacteria is the best example for oxygenic phototrophic bacteria. Here we are going to learn about the cyanobacteria and chlorocyanobacteria. The most important pigment of the chlorophyll would the most important part of chlorophyll is its structure. This complicated structure where magnesium is centralized make it a potential enzyme or a pigment involved in photosynthesis, equipping the bacteria to convert the organic food matter into ATP currency. As I mentioned, there are accessory pigments, chlorophyll B, C, D, and E. We have xanthophylls and carotenoids, along with bacteriochlorophyll pigment. These are the accessory pigment present in limited quantity, enabling to perform the photosynthesis. The light that is absorbed, the specific wavelength of light or a particular wavelength of light is absorbed by this, absorbed by this chlorophyll, that is blue, red or orange. This is the wavelength of light that would be generally absorbed by chlorophyll. Yes, photosynthesis happens under the presence of chlorophyll pigment. This is a photosynthetic pigment. This chlorophyll has an ability to absorb light from the wavelength from orange, red to violet to blue. The electrons in your chlorophyll pigment gets excited, and those electrons are given to the primary electron acceptors. This primary electron acceptors will generally absorb the electrons that have got excited, which means now the chlorophyll has lost electrons. Chlorophyll has lost electrons. It has got oxidized. It has got positive charge. Here, by this process, there is a photoactivation reaction happening where your chlorophyll pigment is splitting up water. The water is being splitted up, that is a photoactivation reaction. By the product of your photoactivation reaction, that is the splitting up of the water molecule, they produce ATP and NADPH. Here, under the presence of carbon dioxide and water or hydrogen sulfide light, a glucose molecule has been produced. This is not with respective to oxygenic or anoxygenic. This is a simple bifurcation or a simple protocol of how exactly photosynthesis occurs in bacteria. Here we are going to learn about how is it different from oxygenic and anoxygenic. As I told you, in anoxygenic photosynthesis, oxygen is not produced as a byproduct. So here we have carbon dioxide and certain molecules such as hydrogen sulfide or molecular hydrogen or any other organic material. In the presence of sunlight and the photosynthetic pigment, the glucose molecule has been produced. But in case of oxygenic photosynthesis, carbon dioxide, oxygen is produced as its byproduct, utilizing the carbon dioxide and water molecule. Here, water molecule generally loses electrons, which means it is getting oxidized. But in case of carbon dioxide, it is an electron acceptor. It accepts electron, it gets reduced. The best example for your anoxygenic photosynthesis would be purple bacteria, and for oxygenic would be cyanobacteria. These are the two important types of photosynthesis that are observed in bacteria. The best example for a reducing agent in anoxygenic photosynthetic bacteria would be sulfur. These are the explanation of what we just got through. And then the oxygenic photosynthetic bacteria or photosynthesis in bacteria are sometimes light dependent and sometimes light independent. Just like the way they are sometimes dependent on water, that is splitting up of the water molecule, or here there is a dependency on the light dependent reaction and light independent reaction. In light dependent reaction, generally the photosynthetic activity or the preparation of the own food happens in the grana of the chloroplast under the influence of sunlight. It is not mandatory for the organisms to be dependent on light. In the place where there are light deficiency, they undergo light independent reaction. There is splitting up of your water molecule into hydrogen and oxygen molecule with the liberation of electrons. As we told, water is always getting oxidized, which means it is always giving away electrons. So this is a chemical reaction to show that when water molecule gets splitted up, they become the byproducts like this, where 4 electrons will be released. This will be accepted by the carbon dioxide. Then the carbon dioxide gets reduced by accepting the electrons. In case of light independent reaction, there is a series of reaction that is happening in the stroma of chloroplast. Here it is in the grana, and light dependent reaction happens in the stroma of the chloroplast. This helps to make carbon dioxide. Helps to make carbohydrates from carbon dioxide molecule by the process of reduction. Here it is under the influence of light. Here it is not under the influence of the light. To understand it in much more detail, here there is a production of in light independent reaction. The products are being produced. The products are ADP and NADP plus. In case of light dependent reaction which happens in the grana of the chloroplast, here water molecules are observed, and here we are going to get the byproducts as ATP plus NADPH. Light independent reaction happens in the stroma, and light dependent reaction happens in the grana of the chloroplast. So here during the light dependent reaction, there will be specialized points which will enable you to trap the sunlight, or those specialized systems just to trap the sunlight of particular wavelength. For that we have photosystem 1 and we have photosystem 2. Photosystem 1 is nothing but PS1, which is believed to be P70, absorbs the wavelength of the light of about far red light. But PS2 is the chlorophyll, called as P680, has an ability to absorb shorter wavelength, that is nearer red light. These photosystems will equip the organism to perform efficient light dependent photosynthesis and to trap the particular required energy of light to excite the electrons in your water molecule and enable them to liberate, so that carbon dioxide can accept it and then ATP production can happen. This comes very handy as a product of your photosynthetic oxygenic process. Here both ATP and NADPH are produced, which is a energy molecule. Electrons will enable to split up the water molecules and liberate electrons. Oxygenic photosynthetic bacteria are could be generally unicellular or multicellular. They possess bacteriochlorophyll along with bacteriochlorophyll pigments like A, B, C, D, E, and xanthophyll and carotenoids. Generally, they are including cyanobacteria. They have the carboxysomes and the gas vacuoles present, which enables them to be more photosynthetic in nature. This is all we have for today's class, where the photosynthetic food that is being synthesized will be stored in the form of glycogen that can be used as a reserve food material. So thank you so much.